So, I was toying around with an idea of this would-be video series that I wouldn't be able to make, but would really like to see. It went as follows. Gee, it would be really cool if some film critique reviewy people could apply their analytical movie shit to video games known for their stories and/or cinematic qualities. Like, would Silent Hill 2 hold up when held to the standards of film? Would Metal Gear Solid, blah 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 blah? Would David Cage? Well, no, David Cage would not, but you know what I mean. As 8 a.m. still can't fucking sleep thoughts tend to go though, shit started to evolve and went from what I just told you about to, can movies even video game at all? And so far, my conclusion has been, no. My theory thing, based on not just my thoughts and totally actual research and anal cis please don't bully, is that media's evolution is partially iterative. Here's my toast professional chart. Essentially, what I mean by this is that each one of these mediums borrows elements from its forebearers, possibly expanding on them, but also brings something uniquely new to the table as well. To the point even that they can improve or add enough to make something completely different or better when adapting something of each of the previous media. For example, you can take a book like Lord of the Rings or The Shining, both incredibly well written and highly regarded works of text-based fiction, and then add to that by making some balls to the wall, tits on the floor, amazing ass movies that bring to life that which was written without any regard in regards to if doing so would be at all possible, thus making an very impressive. And similarly, one could also take a movie like Spider-Man, in which he swings around New York City jacking his little spider ding-dong, clearly having a very good fucking time while doing it, and turn that into a video game that allows you to do the dick jacking yourself. In both cases, shit is bad, or at the very least different enough. Iterative. It adds shit, while taking away very little. But this process, as indicated by the arrows in my chart pointing in only one direction, does not work in reverse. You can't really take the emotional range and subtlety that an actor's face can deliver during even the simplest 1-second single-frame shot and equate that into text, or at least not without over-explaining the ever-living dick out of every single little detail just to make sure everyone's on the same page, only for that process to ironically take multiple pages. It just doesn't work. Books tend to be better at exploring what a character thinks rather than showing what they feel, I guess. Of course, the writer could also choose not to include that particular scene, but in that case, it would so drastically change the message, purpose, or meaning of whatever it was that that scene or even the entire film was trying to convey that it would become a bad adaptation, regardless of its quality as a standalone work. And so, I would also argue that taking a video game, a medium that hinges entirely on player interaction, thus finding its qualities within said interaction, would not translate well to a medium without it.
Harold! Present the examples!
Examples.
Uncharted, Drake's deep dicking, is probably the most appointed game to be made into a movie because, well, in a lot of ways it basically already is one. However, what makes Uncharted stand out? Is it the story about a swashbuckling asshole tough guy America man who goes to poor countries to steal their shit and ruin their infrastructure? Is it the epic gunfights and chase sequences, or the cool indigenous settings? Well, it's pretty much all of those combined, isn't it? But then I also just kinda described Indiana fucking Jones, cause see, what really makes Uncharted is you tensely scaling a giant mountain. The player having to adjust to a crazy situation quickly as they jump between cars and also shoot dudes by way of fun kinetic play, and yeah, you're the one doing it. Uncharted is cool because of you. The things that you do make it memorable. If anything, a lot of this shit probably wouldn't even be all that cool without the interactivity at all. Like the rock climbing, for instance. How the fuck would you include that into a movie without resorting to cutting most of it and using it for simple scene transitions or what have you? Because I mean, if Let's Plays are anything to go by, watching someone leisurely climb about the place for 20 minutes every 2 hours isn't exactly the most entertaining thing ever, so you cut that. Which already is one key aspect of what makes Uncharted taken out of the theoretical Uncharted film. Then there's all of the action sequences, some of which I'm sure would make for exciting scenes, though if you've ever played any of these games, you know that they can be pretty few and far between. They aren't nearly as bombastic as the promotional material would like you to believe, and given the difference in runtime, the Uncharted movie may very well be that bombastic, thus lacking all of the subtleties or whatever. Or alternatively, it wouldn't include nearly enough of these action sequences, thus giving way to, but what about the part where Nate got chased by a burning fucking truck down an alleyway that somehow fit inside the alleyway and also drove at Nate's exact running speed? Level comments. And even then, I'd argue that quite a fair few of these sequences wouldn't really work all that well in general, as the setups are mainly geared towards making for interesting gameplay over making shit just look cool. Basically, I guess, kind of mostly what I'm trying to get at here is that gameplay is often far too silly and abstract to make for good movie material at all. Even brushing aside the film losing any and all entertainment value or engagement what the interactive elements bring, stuff like the climbing in Uncharted, going through literally all the cupboards and closet in adventure and horror games, the often really drawn out and far more realistically paced shootouts in literally any shooter compared to film, and of course, turn-based RPG combat do not make for very exciting viewing even in the slightest. Final Fantasy VII, without running around in the city, talking to people, and standing neatly in line to take turns fighting a, motorcycle thing, wouldn't really be Final Fantasy VII, as is helpfully demonstrated by its movie sequel, Advent Children.
Please watch my retrospective. I worked really hard on it, you guys.
Nor would Uncharted be very Uncharted with all the maps filled in. It would probably just be a shittier Indiana Jones, let's be honest. I don't think it would be too unfair to state that gameplay is always the main propellant of engagement in video games. Even in games where you would initially say that it is, like Dear Esther, are still what they are due to it being a game about you exploring a cave while some disembodied pretension dispenser recites poetry at you. And if the game is any indication, I can't quite seeing a film about someone sheepishly looking at walls whilst questionably diegetic monologues occur out of nowhere being very fun to watch. And like I said too, if you were to exclude all of that, then it wouldn't be a very good adaptation. Might as well just make your own unrelated inspired by thing then in that case. A decently good example of this put into practice is the Danganronpa anime. Thing is that Danganronpa is, as far as video games go, pretty low on the old interaction scale, being that it's a visual novel in which the gameplay almost entirely consists out of simple exploration, advancing dialogue, and the court sessions that house the real meat of the game. Without going into it too much, the player essentially needs to use everything that they've gathered during the chapter leading up to it to then point out what killed the person who died and why. They do this by going through evidence that they've collected, simply using their wits to point out flaws into presented arguments, and by quite literally gunning down the theories, arguments, and questions propelled by all of those present. All of this happens in a fairly fast, timed arcadey fashion, and despite it maybe not looking like much, it's actually quite fun to see your own quick thinking and potential emotional investments conveyed by the writing pay off and play out in this neat little sequence, a satisfying bookend to a zany murder case, so to say. So, what if one were to turn these segments into scenes of a show? Well, the your own quick thinking bit is pretty much off the table already. It feeling rewarding or engaging can be wiped off of the proverbial board as well due to the absence of the arcadey shooting, and really, all that you'll be left with is a by-the-books court case scene where you're kind of meant to root for the people rather than feeling like you're actually part of anything. Which, I mean, there isn't anything wrong with that on its own. I don't think I can really argue the popularity of crime shows, but it is evidently very much not the same fucking thing. And so, even though all of the other elements were fully present in the anime retelling of the first Danganronpa game, this very simple difference was more than enough to make its fans feel largely disappointed. All that considering that it wasn't even really all that bad of a show, so yeah.
Your Honor, I rest my case.
In summation, everything I already said, just said again, but quicker. Also, I didn't mean for this video or my super cool chart to be all like, video games is better than movies. Cause like, they're not. Movies can do things that games can't, like how actors can convey a massive range of emotions that aren't possible in games because mannequin people. Like, as fun as the Spider-Man 2 video game is, it does not do Tobey Quagmire's crybaby manboy face any justice. And books, of course, can fill in and entice your imagination, making you think things that you weren't thinking before. My point just was, I guess, to state that art forms following one another only managed to do so by offering something that the ones prior did not, and that those prior art forms can't replicate that thing in any meaningful way. Or at the very least, I haven't seen any examples of this being done, though. With that said, it's not like a whole lot of research went into this video either. I'm not no journalist, and really, all this video was just an unfiltered dump of thoughts cooked up at 8 a.m. in the morning before bedtime, which is more or less how I prefer to write these as well. A creative contrivance born out of convenience. I am not lazy, shut up. Also, as far as being a video game analyst or essayist goes, I'm not very technical or gameplay focused either. I tend to focus on cultural impacts, themes, artistic merits, atmosphere, and how works can affect people, affect me, inspire me, or how they can invoke creativity in others through clever use of their own. So, in some ways, I felt equipped to discuss this, but I'd be lying if I said that I felt super confident in my arguments either. So, debate me, bitch! As I said, I couldn't think of any examples of a game, gameplay heavy or otherwise, churning on a movie that successfully conveyed what made that game what that game is. As what in my opinion made that game is always in part due to it being a game. But if you can, then I'd genuinely love to hear it. Or if there's already an article or video,
Preferably video.
discussing this topic already, then feel free to hook me up as well.